Hey folks, I'm about to give the 2AR, which is the last speech in the sequence. The order is the cybersecurity advantage and then the terrorism disadvantage. As you'll see, I'm not going to solvency because the negative didn't bring it up in the last speech, but I am going to point out that they conceded that argument on the cybersecurity advantage. All right, everybody ready? Cool. Factors leave our nation vulnerable to cyber attacks. The negative has conceded that our plan could solve this if only it would be allowed to pass. If we win that this is a significant enough issue and that it outweighs the marginal increase of a risk in a terrorist attack, you should vote affirmative. Now, cyber attacks certainly outweigh terrorism. A is magnitude. An attack on the grid would be catastrophic. First is nuclear meltdowns. The negative has conceded that a sustained grid outage would cause the cooling systems that prevent nuclear power plants from melting down to be eviscerated, which would result in radiation spreading around the country, affecting hundreds of thousands of people and causing disease as well as death. Second is military readiness. Other countries could see that our military is just not ready to fight in a world where they are scrambling to even keep the lights on at bases. This could cause our enemies to attack. That's the Tilford evidence. This is a much greater impact than magnitude than terrorism, because even if terrorist attacks would occur, it would be highly unlikely for them to be a WMD attack. It would be more along the lines of what we saw in San Bernardino, such as an isolated couple of gunmen, which of course would be bad, but on the scale of what we're talking about here with cyber attacks is very small. Now, our impact turns the impact to the disadvantage. If the military was unable to function, if the police couldn't keep their lights on in their stations, they would be unable to stop a terrorist attack from occurring, which would render all of their arguments moot. Now, they say that all our impacts are exaggerated, that they're made up, but there is a key framing issue here that you should think about when evaluating the rest of this debate. None of their evidence assumes the kind of vulnerabilities that will occur without our plan. None of their evidence that says cyber attacks are unlikely or have never happened before. It looks to the future where we have literally gaping holes in our critical infrastructure security, where any hacker can possibly take advantage of it. That's what the NSA is forcing to happen now. The NSA is literally imposing standards on both public and private entities to make it very easy to hack into them. This will make cyber terrorism a much easier thing than it has been in the past. Now, we also have very credible sources on our side. The FBI director, James Comey, says this is an incredibly pertinent threat. This is something we need to be afraid of. And we also, all of our evidence is citing lots of experts within the field who really have access to a lot of information. This is not something that we just made up. This is something that really is a concern. And even they say that there wouldn't be cyber terrorism because terrorists don't have a motivation to do so, and that we conceded this argument. That's just not true. We made the argument that we have on good authority that there are cyber terror threats, but even if that's true, there are state actors that want to attack us, like North Korea or China or Iran, and our evidence is speaking to both state and non-state actors. And North Korea, in fact, attacked the U.S. fairly recently, which means this is not just something made up. And finally, the grid collapse is a possibility. If there were multiple coordinated attacks, it certainly could take down the grid, and a terrorist organization or a state that really wanted to hurt the United States definitely could do that. And even if it was only a smaller or more limited in scope attack, it's still something bad that we would want to prevent. Now, the terrorism disadvantage. The negative has still not given a single example of when mass surveillance of the kind we're talking about has solved for a terrorist attack. San Bernardino, actually, they brought up this new example that actually proves our point. We were not able to stop this despite all of the mass surveillance that we have in the status quo. Instead, we should have used traditional investigative techniques like gun control, looking at the gun registries to see that they were amassing weapons. That's something we could have done without mass surveillance techniques that they say we would disrupt. Moreover, their advocacy just means that we would have data overload. We would have far too much data to be able to find the information that we're looking for. And that shows why we haven't actually been able to stop these plots. That's the Schneider evidence. Now, there also just isn't a very big impact to a terrorist attack. There isn't really a high threat of WMD terrorism. Yes, maybe it's a little bit easier for them to, say, steal a nuclear weapon from Russia, but that doesn't mean that they're able to figure out how to detonate it. It doesn't mean they're able to transport it across boundaries. How are they going to get a nuclear weapon from Russia to the United States? There's zero explanation for how that would possibly occur. And their evidence doesn't say these attacks would happen here. It says that they possibly could get nuclear weapons. There's many, many steps in between and many layers of security that they have to get through for that to be possible. And even for smaller attacks, they're still not very likely. On the whole, terrorism is just not a major threat in the United States. It's probably a greater threat abroad, but mass surveillance here cannot do anything about it there.